Hello, this is National Chess Master Rats at ICC, here to analyze a game played in Team4545 League between NimzoMal and Fishhead. And this was played in team event number 57 in the 4th week, and it was selected the game of the week, and I guess that award goes to NimzoMal because White's going to win this. It very well could have been an award to Fishhead because he was definitely on his way to winning this. And sometimes the gods of chess are just cruel. You can play a great game and just suddenly one little slip and the whole game turns on you. And doesn't mean you're a bad player. It just means you got to figure out what's wrong with your game and try again next time. Okay, very, very interesting game. Let's have a look. Okay, so White allows the Nimzo-Indian defense, and E3 the modern move. Now, usually it's rare that White will or Black will take this knight unprovoked. I was just for another series. I was doing videos on. I'm doing videos on all my first tournament games from rated games from 1972 and 1973, and there was a game that I played where I actually did this. Somebody showed me the variation. I think it comes out of the Queen C2 line, though. Yeah, it does. It's something similar. It's basically supposedly called the Franco-Indian. That's what the guy that showed it to me played. It goes just like I'm showing here. And the problem that I ran into as I was going over this game that I played way back in 1973 was that I, as Black, lagged behind in development, and it just didn't turn out to be a great variation. But what did I know back then? You know, my first rating was 1465. Okay, so let's get to where we were. So it just seems that even though Black will do this exchange, it seems premature because often White will put the question to the bishop with A3. Now, if you look back at, for instance, Fischer-Spassky, first match game 1972, Fischer chose, when the A3 finally came, Fischer chose to play bishop A5, which is a line, and that's beyond the scope of this video. But generally speaking, White should be okay if Black's giving up the bishop unprovoked, because usually when you acquire the bishop pair, you do so at a cost of some tempo, usually with a move just like that, or putting the knight on the side of the board to one of the rook 4 squares so it can capture a bishop that's parked on one of the knight 6 squares. And I'll circle them king knight 6 and queen knight 6 for English descriptive. To some degree, English descriptive notation is superior to algebraic in that it can identify squares much easier. Anyway, I don't necessarily recommend playing bishop takes c3. I'm sure it's been played countless times before, but White basically picks up a tempo. And now let's just go forward and see what we get. So c5. Now White does fine here. He's doing the right moves, but if something starts to go wrong here, let's try to put our finger on it and see what that is. Because as I'm saying, White has every reason to be optimistic. He's basically got a tempo in hand. And developing there's nothing wrong with doing that. You really can't fault. But one thing I think White might be lacking in doing is trying to get this E4 move in. Try to activate this bishop. This bishop often doesn't have a lot of scope for White in the Nimzo-Indian. One extra square it has, for what it's worth, is A3. Now that may or may not be a valuable square. Depends on how much pressure White can put on c5. Or it should Black take, which he probably won't. That would repair the White pawn structure in some respects, or allow him to open up a line activating the bishop. The bishop would have not only the option of this diagonal, but have the option of this diagonal. So let's just kind of go forward and see. And here, I guess maybe this is the point where maybe E4 is too late. White's looking at this and saying, I really like having this diagonal. I really do. I don't want to give it up. So appears that E4 is out of the question now, simply because D4 drops. Isn't White going to lose a pawn here? Well, let's take a look. Okay, White's lost a pawn, but it's a double pawn. Maybe White can just get that pawn back. Okay. Oh wait, there's a nuisance move here I didn't consider. Knight B4. So let's back up and let's try this move for White here. Okay. Now, if Black plays E5, he doesn't have to. White can go in for the D5 push, which is going to come up anyway. Technically, Black can get some counterplay against C4, and the idea is to use these three squares to do it. I'll show you how that's done. Knight A5. Now, for instance, if Queen E2, Black will play B6, Bishop A6, Queen D7, and Queen A4. And White's going to have a horrible time protecting that pawn. It's going to tie him all down. He has to come in and play Knight D2. I remember getting Black like this when I had just broken 2000. I was playing a strong master, and he allowed me this, and I just basically built up a one game as Black. Then I went to sleep and butchered it, but it's a great maneuver by Black. But while Black's making all this time to do this little strategy, White has time to get his thing going on the king side. So that's kind of beyond the scope of this video. So, I'm just thinking back. White's got the two bishops. Maybe it's time to activate them. How can that be done? Well, we found this pawn on C3 is kind of valuable. What if we just take this? Okay, nobody likes to have triple pawns, but sometimes you have to think beyond the box here. You have to come up with new ideas and new strategies. What this does is it says, I want the board open up, and I want to open it up for my bishops. So for the moment, Black cannot push his D pawn. Okay, he can push his E pawn, but maybe he doesn't want to. Black's going to have to take time to collect that pawn back. Now, how does he want to take it? With Knight A6 and Knight C5? Make him think about it. Does he want to play Queen E7 and Queen takes C5, or Queen C7 and Queen takes C5? And who knows? Like I say, we have this A3 square I was talking about earlier. Maybe there's something there. Like, for instance, if Queen A5, well, it threatens D2, but we come up and guard it, and suddenly A4. Now, did we really gain a tempo there? Yes, we did. If the pawn had been on A3 earlier, we still could have gone to A4, but we wouldn't have had one more move in the position. We wouldn't. In other words, this bishop or this queen wouldn't have been developed. So now White has a threat that Black needs to deal with. So how's he going to deal with it? D6. Okay, fine. Let me just as a sample line now. I'm talking about getting these bishops activated. Well, for the moment, this bishop is activated, but it's not going anywhere. The question is to get this guy active. How are we going to do that? Well, let's go ahead and try this. And then we'll play E4. Now we've got an idea to play E5, and we're relying on a pin. The fact that this pawn cannot take because the bishop will grab the rook. So here's Black with this undeveloped queen side, and White's trying to get his bishops active. Suddenly Black has to deal with threats. So what's the best way to do with that? Well, develop a piece. Okay, that applies a defense to E5, but then White just develops his piece, and he's planning to go back there again. And maybe Black has to play Rook D8, but who knows? It might be a position where White could sacrifice this pawn. Okay, let's just sacrifice it and castle. And White's got some open lines here, and the Black bishop is buried on C8. It's not yet developed. I mean, this is potentially playable for White. Okay, so let's see how it went. And that's what analysis is about. This is how you analyze things. And sometimes a pawn sacrifice can work. And I hadn't rehearsed that. I just found it right here. All my videos are pretty much unrehearsed. I play through the game once, look at a few things, and make a video, and everything just falls naturally. But we'll see what kind of bottleneck white gets in here in a minute. And d5, it looks like it's a great move. It's seizing space. But what's really interesting is this position soon takes on the characteristic of a king's Indian defense, and there's a couple differences. Number one, black doesn't have this bishop on g7. It's been traded for a knight, and that's black's worst piece in a king's Indian defense. So black's done well, and he's gotten rid of a very valuable piece of white's against the king's Indian defense, the queen knight. That knight is often doing a lot of things on the queen side. It's gone. So white still hasn't solved the problem of this bishop. And he can only solve it by imprisoning this one, like if he plays e4. Let's take a look and see what happens. He plays h3. Now, this in effect, in my opinion, gives the tempo back. Okay, the tempo that white gained by not playing a3, this gives it back. I've talked about these pawn to rook 3 moves in countless videos. I see so many people making them. The idea is to keep something out of g4. Okay, that's what the idea is. Or knight 5. What's the big deal if black puts a piece there? Okay, let's keep our pawn structure intact. Okay, when you advance a pawn, you're creating a weakness. At some point, it's going to be opposed by another pawn, and that pawn gets there quicker. This bishop isn't going to do much in the game. Let's just make our pawn center. Now, what's black going to do? Play bishop g4? Well, fine. Let him. Okay? Just let him. Let's develop a piece. Okay? Now we got our pieces developed. What are you afraid of? This? I mean, this is what I assume someone's afraid of. Well, fine. Now, white's threatening to do the same thing. Actually, white probably doesn't want to because he's going to have this bad bishop. But this is the kind of bishop that can, this is the kind of position that can be opened up for the two bishops. Okay, let's suppose black doesn't want double pawns. Okay, and maybe black wants to come into f4 with a knight. Well, it's not going to be. He'd love to get this other knight here, but that's kind of hard to do. There's a pin. So let's try for that strategy. Okay, now h3, bishop here. Hey, look, we got it in. Okay, but white's got some activity here. Okay, and it's hard to see how it looks like black's okay here, but so's white. Okay, that just chases the queen out, so I don't know if that's the best move. You want to play f5? You can't play it. Yeah. So this rook never gets active at the expense of getting these knights here. So let's just put the queen here. And seems to me that the game's at least even. White's probably not losing this like he does. Okay, at some point we can shoot for putting the rook here. Let's develop this rook, bring this guy back. And just park the king in the corner. Seems like a good idea. And then suddenly, white puts his bad bishop out there. Says, "Go ahead, please take it, take it. I want you to take it." And black doesn't want any part of that, right? Let's put a rook on the file. And now we're going to go get rid of it. No matter what you do, we're going to get rid of it. And suddenly, maybe white's got the better position here. So that's not forced, but how, people ask me how to analyze a game. Well, there's countless possibilities, all right? When I analyze a game, I just try to make logical moves for both sides. Doesn't mean they're the best move. I mean, if you look enough at my videos, you'll see all the howlers I come up with, all these one-move threats. There's countless other possible variations, but I'm just trying to get a feel of the play for what could happen. And e4 is just called for. And white doesn't have to fear him taking this knight. Just develop a piece. If you're really afraid of that, well, bring your bishop back for darn sakes, If you don't want the double bishop or double pawns, but I'm saying the bishop g5 move is fine. Let him double. Let him. Maybe white can play this move. Now white wants to get his knight into f5. Maybe not. If black takes, white takes back with the bishop and maintains the pin. White's getting ready to offer a bishop trade. And one thing about the King's Indian defense, this light squared bishop is black's best piece. Okay, White would love to trade his crummy bishop off for it. So anyway, h3 is a mistake. Okay, guys, your game will be so much easier if you don't make these moves, and I see them constantly. In Team 45 play, I see them all the time, and they're just plain out bad. So what if he goes there? You're making the black attack get there quicker, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Okay, so now the bishop moves not so much for scope, but to connect the rooks. And now black's getting ready for his trademark f5 break. He's got it. Now he's threatening to fork. So white says, I don't want that. And there's no way black's going to take on e4 and activate white's light squared pressure. So he just pushes by. And suddenly, here we have it, the classical King's Indian type position. With the difference being, as I said, black's dark squared bishop is off the board. Now suddenly, black is very close to having a winning game here. Because white's in a normal King's Indian defense, black pointing the wrong way. Black has 2 files to operate on, okay, and white normally has 3, but in this case, white only has 2. But in a normal King's Indian, there's play on the C file, which is gone here, and white has 3 files, black has 2. Yet they consider the position as even, for the simple reason that there's a target at the end of black's rainbow, so to speak, the enemy king. So black is very close to having theoretically winning position here. It's just a matter of finding the moves and putting white on the defensive. So after 14 moves, white's opening has failed, and yet his last several moves were developing moves. His last 3 moves were let's look at him. What happened after h3, which I said is a bad move? And h3, now he develops a bishop. Okay, got to connect the rooks. He doesn't develop a rook yet, queen rook yet, but he gets a rook developed. Boom, f5. Now there's the threat. Maybe what white could do is play passively and play bishop f1. Just allow black to maybe play e4 and take some of the sting out of the black pawn roller, but that gives up the e5 square. Black's going to get a knight in there soon enough. White just got a bad game here, and it all because he did not. It could be because he played h3. So let's move forward. But like I say, white's in trouble. Okay, no matter how you slice it, white's in trouble. Now all black has to do is just make routine moves. Start pointing pieces at the king side. Here they come. And white makes a valiant effort here. But all the play is black's. And in the line I showed earlier, the game looked about even. And I finally found a way to, just trying the idea of putting the knights on g6 and f4. There were other plans. I found a remedy for white in that one line. There's plenty in that position. You can analyze, but this is how you get better at chess. You analyze a position out. Look at this possibility. Look at that possibility. What do you like? What do you don't like? Because when you get down to playing in a game, you've got to be able to move the pieces in your head, and you can do that when you have an idea of what candidate moves you have at your disposal and what certain moves that weaken yourself do to you. And h3 is just simply a blunder. Okay, gave black all the play he wanted, and here comes black. White's just fumbling around. Look at that bishop. It just kind of waffled a couple moves. Here comes black's attack, and white's just shuffling pieces now. Black's little prophylaxis move safeguards b7. White just maneuvering around, fumbling around, and this move at first surprised me simply because the way I would analyze, I'd say the first thing I would say, I don't want to trade off my good piece, but this is actually good. White loses if he takes off that bishop. You just have to analyze a little bit. There's twin threats. Checking here, forcing the king over, then check and pick up g2, and then the threat on f2. So white's busted here. Very close to being busted. But what white does is he takes, but what actually, it's interesting. I was playing this trying to find a good move, and I actually found one for white. I was kind of surprised by it, and I'll explain the thought process on this, because this is key to a lot of our thinking deficiencies when we play the game. We reach a certain position and we reject moves just on general principle. And the move I'm going to suggest for white is exactly one of those. But it actually has a lot of merit to it once you analyze it. And we'll do a little bit of it. But what we do is we throw up brick walls. And when we analyze them, we say, I can't play there because he does this. And we slam the door shut. And we don't look any further. And as many of you know, a lot of times there's a little trick at the end of that. And you have to condition yourself to analyze these can't moves, the things you can't do. Now, International Master Jeremy Silman of How to Reassess Your Chess fame said something along these lines. He said, if you can eliminate these can't moves, in other words, if you can actually analyze the moves you say you can't play and verify on the board whether you actually can't, instead of just rejecting them on principle, your rating will go up about 200 points. Okay? And I believe what he says. And here comes the can't move. You're not going to believe it. Okay? Who would play G3? That looks just horrible. It further weakens the white position, but it's got an interesting point to it. And here, let's talk about it. It gets kind of crazy. I don't know if this is accurate or not. Maybe white's still a little worse off here, but it gives him a breath of fresh air, and that's what's important here. Okay, bishop's f1. Now that forces the queen back here. Now if you look, this f4 square is suddenly unprotected. We've given up this pawn. Like let me back that up and show this again. We reject g3 because the queen takes h3. And there's even another possibility here we'll come back to. But g3, queen takes. Let's chase the queen out, just because there's a nuisance there. Now let's go win this pawn. Okay. Now, just for instance, this variation. Now what's happened? The dark squared bishop sprang to life. A piece that was absolutely dead of white's sprang to life. Suddenly it has scope. Now there's all kinds of crazy tactics here. There's a lineup here. We have to watch out for discoveries, but knight taking on d5 is no good. But all of a sudden, even though white's king position is weak, he's got some mobility, and that makes all the difference. Now the queen can run over here if need be to help out. This bishop has a little better scope than it once did. This looks very playable for white. Let's see. So what else can black do? Well, after bishop f1, he has to play here. Oops. He has to play queen h5. Now, can black do anything else? Well, sure. He could try g3. But, there's some tactics in this. Now the threat is to play rook g8. It looks like maybe white's getting a little bit of hot water here. But I tend to think white's going to have some resources. Let's see, queen here. Maybe not. Maybe not. There's some zaniness here that you have to check. But let's back it up. There's nothing making white take with the queen. There's nothing making white take taking on g3 with the queen. What about maybe this? What does black really have? Knight g4. Well, it threatens a mate. White can cover that. Queen e2 for 1. And most importantly, it looks like the white pieces have suddenly got a lot of breathing room. So nobody wants to play a move like g3, but we reject it. We reject it simply because it hangs h3. But the key is getting rid of this pawn on f4. Now, what else can black do? Well, you can bring the queen back right away, but that doesn't solve the problem on f4. Okay. Now it's even interesting after queen takes here. Whoops. Let's see. Where was this? Back this up. Okay. White could even try this move directly. Now he's trying to trade queens. White would happy to trade queens off in this position. If black trades, like I say, there could be some discoveries. But then again, white's got his choice of pawns to grab, and each one tempos a rook. I think white will survive this. White could even consider giving up the knight, and then trying to activate this bishop. I mean, there's is white down a pawn here? Yes, white's down a pawn, but his pieces are coming to life, and black is slightly undeveloped over here. So G3 was an interesting resource. So maybe, let me back up. Maybe what black needed to do, since all white's doing is shuffling his pieces, is black needs to complete his development. Okay, play bishop d7, king h8, rook g8, because white really can't do anything here. He can't. So that might have been preferable for black. But let's look and see what happened. Okay, g4. Now he takes. Now, further imprisoning this bishop. Both white's bishops are just horrible. For those that say, "Oh, I've got the bishop here." Yeah, but what are you going to do with them? The answer is nothing. The lines I was giving, which deserve much more analysis. I mean, there are probably some flaws in there. Don't be surprised if there are. But my gut feeling is white comes out of that okay, and it's simply because what black could have launched his attack just a little too quick. Anyway, bishop d7, and black's winning. Doesn't matter what white does. He's just suffocated. Black has all the play here, and this is great. Get the rook into play. And I'll show you where white went wrong, or black went wrong, the win black missed. White's just barely hanging on by a thread here. This is perfectly good. But this isn't the best move, because white's still fumbling here. The best move is simply return the rook to this square. The point being that white cannot trade queens because he can't stop this pawn from promoting. Okay, let's get this over here. White's basically defenseless. The threat is to play e4 and bust this position even more open. What's white going to do here? Pick a move. Do you want to play bishop c2 to stop e4? Well, you can pretty much play it anyway. The defensive power of a pin piece is purely imaginary. Okay? So, okay, we'll come back here. And like I say, black's busting this position open. I mean, it's just screaming to sacrifice on f3, but you got to be careful. But hey, that bishop's pinned. Let's apply some pressure to it. White's dead here. He's just dead in the water. And there's probably more than one way to win it. This is just the one I saw. But let's go back to what happens. But now the difference is this pawn on h2 now, instead of being a strength, becomes a weakness. And the game's about even now, unfortunately. And black manages to butcher it. Because... But this was the point where black just had to say, I can't win, and let me just take... Oh, wait. Why can't he take this pawn? There, he could. I don't know why it beeped. This is the time for black just to say, okay, you know what? I had a great attack, but it didn't work, and let's call this game a draw. It's headed for a draw. This is what black needed to do. But sometimes we get in a mindset that we're winning a game, and suddenly it's not as clear, but we still think we're winning one, or we justify in our mind, well, the win has to be there, or I can beat this guy. Look, he butchered it earlier. We get that mindset, and that's something you have to say. You know what? I did have a great game, but I didn't play it right. I've got to make sure I don't lose this. And unfortunately, a lot of people lose games trying to win them when the position doesn't call for playing for win. You don't play to draw, but you play to stay even and keep the game in doubt any way, shape, or form you can. Okay, but what's going to happen is, believe it or not, this H pawn and this E pawn are going to disappear or be pretty much off the board, and White's going to be left with two center pass pawns. Let's see what happens. And many times Black could have liquidated that one pawn, so you can liquidate it here, right? But he doesn't. He's trying for the win, and as it turns out, these pawns become weaknesses, and White's going to win them. It's still not too late to take this pawn, but now it is. And now this one goes by, and even though G3 looks weak, Black can't get at it. Now, unfortunately, for Black, he suddenly has two weak pawns in his position. White probably has a winning game here, simply because Black has two weaknesses in his position. That's what you need to win a game, two weaknesses. One weakness isn't enough, two will do it. And now suddenly it's bad enough that for Black that he's got two weak pawns. White's has a couple connected pawns, and he's starting to shove them up the board. Well, there goes one pawn, which really it opens up a line that but Black can't use it, and these pawns are just getting ready to run some more. Here they go. And there's just nothing Black can do. H3 is about to fall. There it goes. It's a goner. And even a check on E3 does no good because G4 is covered, and when the king backs up, E2 is covered, and the rook defends laterally. See? You want to trade rooks? I don't think so. Well, let's see. Is this the kind of position Black could trade rooks and hope to draw? The point being that Black's got the better bishop, and he does have a blockade. This is interesting. This could be a draw. Hadn't thought about this until now. How does White make progress? Okay. The only way I can think to make progress is White's going to have to sacrifice one of those pawns. This one. Okay, but it's Black's move. So what can Black do? Black's got great king position. Let's just move the bishop laterally. Now, let's move the king. Now, let's play it. Now, it seems at some point Black may have to deal with this. But if he does, he's giving up king position. What if Black just ignores it? This very well could be a draw. White doesn't have an entry point. White has no entry points. Nope, this is a draw. What am I missing? Let's see. And again, it's one of those things we say, I can't do that. I'm down two pawns. But how much time did he spend on that move? Let's see. He played his rook down there. He had 12 minutes on his clock, and it went up by 24 seconds. So he spent 21 seconds on the move. No, this move draws. Amazing. See, the point is, White doesn't have an entry point anywhere. Maybe keep this bishop on this diagonal instead of backing it up. Let's play with a little bit. But I don't know if White can get anywhere just getting his bishop to that diagonal if Black gives it up. Okay, we'll go back to that move. Now it comes here. What I was saying is just ignore the pawn. Come back. Now we've given up the pawn to get this diagonal. But is that enough? White would like to get his bishop to D7. And maybe White can win this, getting that diagonal. He wants to get his bishop to D7 so that the king has an entry point. Okay? But then this bishop is tied down. to guarding this pawn, but then when the white king runs to the queen side, the black king does the same thing. So, interesting. Is it a draw or not? Very interesting. Let's see. They don't want to move the king. You don't want to give white any hope here. Okay, so the bishop's kind of in a little bit of difficulty here. The black bishop, it can't really move anywhere. Well, it can. I mean, it's limited to G8 or G6. Playing the G8 kind of invites this cute move. Now the bishop's further tied in, but you know, we try to tie it in more, but suddenly it's got a new diagonal, but anyway, let's not play bishop f7. Let's do what we have to do. Start bringing the king over. But then again, there's no rule in chess that says that black has to bring the king over now. Suppose he just keeps an eye on that pawn. Okay, that means that white has to keep his bishop on d7. Okay, so black shuffles. Now white starts bringing the king over. Now it's black's turn to bring his king over. Okay, white brings his king over. Now let's play here. Tempo the bishop. Oh wait, who's moving it? It's black's move. King here. Now, interesting choice that you got to be careful about bishop d3 trying to win this pawn. But what I'm trying to do is see if black can set up a fortress over here. You know, see, white has an entry point a4. The black king will come back over here at some point. So, it's black's move. King here, king up. Now we got to be careful. We might get mated. There's some tricks in here. This threatens mate, right? If black plays silly, whoops, checkmate. So let's see. But even if the king gets to a4, is it going to go anywhere else? No, this game very may well be a draw. That and bishop e8 keeps the king out of a4. So yeah, I think it's a draw. Rook takes h3 drew. Fishhead, you missed a draw. Okay, so rook e1. If I'm wrong, somebody tell me, show me. I'd be happy to learn something. Because I mean, if I don't want to be defending a position like this as black, but if I am, let's look at this a little more. Okay, let's try to get some instruction out of this. And if you're trying to run two pawns with a king and bishop against a let me rephrase that. You have a bishop and two pawns against a bishop. Well, they're going to win, but in a main position. There could be some exceptions, but essentially they're going to win if those are the only two, the only material on the board. The fact that there's a bunch of locked queenside pawns on the board works in black's favor because these take entry points away from the white king. The other thing is black owns the dark squares, and white's not getting in. There's no way white can force his way in anywhere. His only possibility is a timely sacrifice of that f pawn, because the white king isn't going anywhere. No, there's one other winning try, but even then, even if the king gets to e4, if the pawn advances to f6 and f7, and black takes it with his pawn, with his bishop, that white king still is not entering into the position. So if you're playing, if we eliminate all the queenside pawns, this is probably a win for white, simply because white will occupy e5. But that pawn on d6 makes all the difference. So for black being in a defensive nature, even if those queenside pawns didn't exist, this is about as good as he can get. Especially the fact that if those pawns were gone and black to play, black does have a draw. Eliminate these pawns in your mind. And I'm just putting arrows and circles on them. black would draw with bishop takes f5. And after pawn takes, king takes, and we know that's a book draw. And if white doesn't take, black's just going to take again, and it's a draw. So, black, you missed a draw. Okay, let's see what happened. So, now let's talk about that. What did white do wrong here then? Because white seems to be winning this position, as I was saying. So, what white did wrong was he went. He didn't go after and win this pawn on h3 the right way. What white should do is play rook e3, bishop e2, and bishop f1. That will do it. Then black's hopeless. Then white doesn't give control of g5, and that will force the rook out, and then g5 will come in. So white misplayed it here. He still had time to fix things, or did he? Not after king g5. So rook h7 could have been a mistake. White could repeat the position, and black's embarrassed because he, well, is black embarrassed? Yeah, because he didn't take king g5. But maybe black can't play king g5. Can he play this? Well, he played it later, but maybe, yeah, maybe rook e7. It's just the way it went. White giving up g5 wasn't good. So let's revert to the main line and go forward and see how this all turned out. So black missed a draw. We'll call it a draw at that point, which would have been a fair result. Both sides would have missed a win. But now the black king isn't active in the white camp. And now he gets a pawn on a dark square. Two pawns on dark squares. And they seem advanced. They seem potentially weak, but black can't do anything. White's just able to give his bishop up, and the pawns are so far advanced there's no defense. And here the game ended up ending as the pawns, a little spite check, and the pawn's unstoppable. So what's the lesson to be learned? There's plenty of them here. One is that don't overestimate your chances. The other one is consider more possibilities. And I want to thank everyone for taking the time to look at this. It certainly turned out to be a very instructive game. As I say, I use my own natural ability on these things. I wish I had more time to devote to them, but I don't. I know I make some howler suggestions, and you sharp people that are finding them, post on my thing. What about this move? Yeah, you're right. Good for you. It doesn't take away from the quality I deliver. So anyway, I've been very busy. That's why this video didn't get made. Maybe if I had made it sooner, I would have missed the draw, because I didn't find it until I was sitting here. I was just play it again. You'll see. I was assuming white was winning, but black had a draw. But if I'm wrong, let me know. Thanks again. Take care.